Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about Microsoft Sentinel Data Lake. Who are we? My name is Christopher Brumm, and with me today is Marvin Rose. We are part of the security team from glueckkanja, and both are cybersecurity architects. We are very excited about Data Lake. And since we are working on a day-to-day basis with Microsoft Defender XDR and Microsoft Sentinel, we are helping customers with projects and as part of as managed SOC in the day-to-day operations. So we were very excited when we heard the first time about Data Lake, and this has continued over time. And now we want to share our view on it and maybe give you an intro, and hopefully we can come back later on and diving deeper in specific topics. So this is first of all an overview. And yeah, talking about overview, let's start with the question, what is a data lake, Marvin?
Yeah, so we will start with the first intro of data lake. And like Sentinel, Data Lake is just a cloud native tool, and especially for Data Lake, it is a cost optimized storage. What is a big change here is that the first time with Data Lake we have a 6:1 ratio for our log storage. That means if you ingest 600 GB of data, you will only pay for 100 GB in the storage tier. And of course, that will give us the opportunity to ingest more logs, maybe extend our retention, like for Defender XDR tables. And of course, Data Lake is not only storage. We also have some different tools, like our advanced analytics. We have some KQL queries. We have Jupyter Notebooks. And of course, we will talk a little bit later about AI-powered threat detections and so on. And of course, it's completely fully managed by Microsoft, so you do not need to manage an ADX cluster or anything else. Yeah, before going more in detail, Chris, maybe tell us a little bit more of use cases, what we can see in the field.
Yeah, we had some hopes and expectations when we heard, okay, there will be, especially we will have a more cost or a cheaper way of storing stuff. And yeah, I think this is not a complete list, but this is the first thing that came into our mind when we heard, okay, we get additional options. The first thing is we've noticed that many admins started to export logs on their local machines when it comes to, I don't know, forensics or bigger investigations, because a bigger ingest in the analytics tier of Sentinel was relative cost extensive. And setting up an Azure Data Explorer cluster also is nothing that you can, that everyone is just doing. So, and this is one of the things that we try to address with Data Lake, so we don't have to be that critical what we and how many we ingest. The second thing is, in the past, our advice was, okay, yeah, you don't want to ingest raw logs. You only want to ingest raw logs if you have a lot and good detection use cases. So, and because often the ratio of the value of the log and the costs for the log were not in a good situation. And this is something that we also want to address with Data Lake, because now we have options that we can ingest logs on a lower price and take only a subset of them for our use cases or our ideas what we want to do with it. The third one is, and this directly connects what I just said, I only need a very short subset of, I don't know, 3 to 5% of the whole logs for detections. I want to keep the whole log for, I don't know, forensic reasons or compliance reasons. And this is also a use case that we try to cover. In our presentation, we will try to show you the tools and the options how to work at these use cases. This is why we're starting with them. And the last one for it, it's, yeah, directly connects to what I just said. We want to store, or many companies want to store their data, and not only the time that is there by default. Many of us have requirements for, I don't know, forensics or regulatory compliance reasons to store their data for, I don't know, half a year or a year. And this is also a valuable use case that was not really good solved in the past by Microsoft Sentinel. And this directly brings us to our agenda. We will go, Marvin will in a sec show more about the architecture of Data Lake and how it fits into the whole ecosystem, into Microsoft XDR and Sentinel. Then we will do a deep dive for the topic storage tiering and cost optimization. I think this is a main topic for many who start with this, with Data Lake. And then we will come back to use cases. So connect to the use cases that I just showed. And as a last part, and while we started to make ourselves familiar with Data Lake, this is the part we are most excited about, because with Data Lake you not only get cheaper storage, you also get new interfaces, the options to use to directly connect it as an MCP server with your favorite AI. And we can use data scientist tools like Jupyter Notebooks, and it will empower the XDR part with Sentinel Graph. And yeah, we will have some demos for it. And but at first, Marvin will tell us something about the architecture.
So before going into the details to Data Lake, let's have a first look on our traditional SIEM solution. So we are having a look on the upper purple frame here. You can see our traditional SIEM and SOAR solution, which is called Sentinel. And on the lower part, we can see the additional tools which will come with Data Lake. Of course, we have our storage in this kind area here. We have some kind of advanced models like Graph and MCP server, which Chris already announced. And we have some analytics engine, which is named, or which exists of tools like Sparks, KQL, and machine learning as well. What is here important? You can see the purple frame. Data Lake has a requirement of unified SecOps portal. Unified SecOps means we need to connect our Azure Sentinel with our security portal with Defender XDR. So this is the important point to get Data Lake activated. In the next slide, we will have a look how we will push data into the Data Lake. So let me show you first the diagram here. On the top, we have data sources, maybe like Entra, maybe like a third-party firewall. On the left, we have our analytics tier, which is our default. In the analytics tier, we are able to do detections, we're able to do workbooks, and so on. And the first benefit here, if you ingest data into the analytics tier, it will automatically mirror into the Data Lake at no additional cost. Okay? So going into the details to Data Lake, it is called like a low-cost storage for advanced analytics, which means you will not have the full capabilities like detections in the analytics tier. But of course, when we have a look on the cost, it will be very attractive to bring the data here. And of course, first time you are able to push the data directly into Data Lake. So you do not need to push the data first in analytics tier, pay for the higher costs for the ingestion cost. You can push the data directly into the Data Lake, which means you will have lower costs for the log ingestion. And of course, if the data is pushed into data lake or ingested, you have some kind of tools which we are told before, like maybe KQL jobs, which means you are able to have some data re-ingested into analytics tier to do KQL detections and all the stuff. And of course, this is the main use case where we talk about we will put the higher amount of data into data lake and only a subset into the analytics tier. Of course, you can have queries natively in the Defender portal on the data lake. Because of the lower ingestion costs, there may be some more additional cost for queries, but we will have a look later on what is the benefit, what are the costs on it. And of course, with Jupyter Notebooks, we are able to have a look on a big amount of data. So if you're working currently with advanced hunting, I'm pretty sure you reach some limits regarding table sizes, log events, and all the stuff. So Microsoft introduced the runtime pools. And there are 3 different pools, like a small, a medium, and a large one. And you are able to select the pool before connecting it. And just to give an example, if you do some development, you want to search for data, just start with a small pool to work with your data. So if you're not aware, if you already activated the Unified SecOps portal, I have just a short screenshot which shows you the security portal. And on the left pattern, you are able to see that the Microsoft Sentinel connection or blade. And then you are able to see, hey, all these stuff should be included here. So if you click on one of the details here, like Content Hub or like workbooks, you should be able to see natively the old Azure Sentinel workblade. Yeah, so we want to give you a little bit more detail how the admin view is or looking like. And so we prepared a small demo, right, Chris?
Yes. So we have a demo. This demo is meant for 1 moment. Let's switch over to the demo. And yeah, we are starting in the Microsoft Defender XDR portal and going to the Sentinel section, and we are starting at the different tables. Here we see all the different tables that are in our unified platform, and we can see there that we have different tiers. And if we just select the data lake tier, we can see a lot of maybe familiar first-party tables and third-party. And also if we look at the different data connectors, so in this case a syslog connector for, I don't know, network components or so, we can see that this connector directly sends the data to data lake. And of course, we can also investigate the data. This is not done directly via hunting. We do it with the KQL queries. And there we have 2 types of tables. The first thing is are assets. This is managed directly by and enriched directly by data lake. And the other part are the tables that you also can see in your Sentinel environment. So data lake is mirroring them, and there will be some of them that are only accessible via the data lake part if they are directly ingested there. And Marvin has told us we can build some jobs. Here is a job. This job runs every minute and surfaces or brings some a subset, only the first 5 entries of a table to another table in the analytics tier. And yeah, we're talking about costs. And one very important, and I really like the part here, is we have a good overview about our costs for the different parts of data lake. So we have ingestion costs and storage costs and query costs and so on. Microsoft has tried to build a solution that is cost optimized. And so we have different parts that have different costs. And we also have an option to directly build alerts in it so that we can track, especially while in introduction or in the first time, and I think later on also, where we can track if our costs are getting out of our expected ranges. and over some specific thresholds. And as you can see, this natively fits into your XDR environment. So, and you can use it for the first-party stuff, like your Defender tables or your hunting tables, and for third-party stuff like the syslogs that I've just enabled. So, and the prereq for is that we need the unified part, and this means, yeah, you need to have a Sentinel for this, but you don't need to ingest third-party logs for it. So yeah, let's move on to the first topic about costs, right? And
Perfect, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, this is your part.
Yeah. So yeah, we have several benefits of data lake, and we will have a look on every set of category here. But before going into the detail of costs, I would like to show you a little bit more of the history of Sentinel and the data retention, because there's quite a big change. So let's have a look what was active in the past. So if we're talking about detections and especially analytics tier, we are talking about the interactive retention period. This is the period where we actively can have a look in the data, but this also means we will just pay the normal ingestion fee. Of course, 90 days is in default by Sentinel. You are able to extend this type of retention to 2 years, but after that, you have to use the archive tier. And archive tier means something like a cold storage. And unfortunately, the archive tier was not very flexible, because if you want to work with this data just in combination with sign-in logs or something like that, you had to restore this data. And restore means in that way you have to pay some fees, especially for every day that the data exists. And of course, this was not the quite nicest way. So let's have a look how it works with data lake. So with data lake, we have a big change, because as already shown in the picture before, we have the big change that data which is ingested into analytics tier will directly mirror into the data lake. So we have first time the availability to combine my sign-in logs with data lake logs like firewalls or proxy systems to bring the logs together. And this is just an example, because you could also have the Defender tables and many other tables in the different tables. And yeah, we are talking up to 12 years, so there's no change for the retention period or time, but I'm pretty sure 12 years is always fits the benefit, or is always fine for your environment. And of course, first time we already thought about it, you have some functionalities like Chris already showed us in the demo, like the KQL query and the jobs. And a little bit later, we will talk about the Jupyter Notebooks as well. So now coming back to costs, we have prepared something for you. And I would like to bring it back when we talked about our data flows. The first data flow was we are going to our analytics tier, and that data will be mirrored. So that means we will go this direction, or just from the connectors, not the payment here. We will go from the connectors to the analytics tier. We have some costs here in that way. Of course, if we're going beyond the 90 days, there are some retention costs, okay? The data will be mirrored, will be in data lake, no additional cost on that way. Talking about the way directly into data lake means we will go this way here at the bottom. That means we will have some cents, in addition about 20 cents for ingesting costs to bring this data into data lake. And of course, there is some, like a data lake storage where we talked about it, there are some retention costs. But coming back to the beginning of the presentation, I told something like there is a compression rate from 6 to 1. That means 600 gigabyte of ingesting data is only 100 gigabyte in the data lake storage, okay? So this is very attractive to use and to work with the data. So because of the low ingesting cost and the storage cost, we need to pay for every query that we will use in the KQL query blade. That means we have nearly 1 cent for every gigabyte, So I think that's an amount we can work with it and have a look on it later if we talk about forensic or compliance reasons, etc. And of course, if we talk a little bit later about our Jupyter notebooks, we have some kind of fees to pay for the runtime pools, like for the compute hours, which we'll use for the runtime pools. Yeah, these prices are currently based on the Northern Europe data center, and please keep in mind this is just the prices from today. They could be changed in the future. But Chris,
Yes.
I think you have a quite good example for us to get a better comparison.
Yeah, that's a snapshot, but it gives you a good idea, about an idea about how much things can cost. And while Microsoft is trying to break this down in multiple parts to make it more cost attractive and fair, it's also confusing, and people think that, okay, maybe this is a trap because I now have to pay for this and for that, and let's see how it works out in the real world. So we've brought an example with us, and this example is for ingestion of a gigabyte with a retention of a year. So on the left, the left bar is what you have without an activated data lake. So you pay for the ingest of the gigabyte, the list price of a little over $5, and you will get the first 3 months of retention with it. And for the rest, for the 9 months on top, you can pay for the archive. And this is way cheaper than the analytics tier, and brings us to a price, an effective list price for $5.37. And this is what we had last year at this time in many environments. So maybe you don't paying list price, but yeah, for comparison, this is reasonable to do. And the next thing is, if you just enable data lake and switch from archive to the data lake storage, you will have you will reduce the price for the 9 months because of the compression that Marvin just told us about. You will pay the same $2.3 per gigabyte, but we will only have we can use that compression rate, and this will reduce the effective price for about 16 US cents. And then now let's have a look at this tiny bar on the right side. If you ingest directly into the data set, our ingest costs, and this is the summary of if we go through that way that Marvin just showed on the last slide, the summary for this is 18 US cent or dollar cent per gigabyte plus the $2.3 per gigabyte for the storage. So we are falling down, we're dropping to $23 US per price. And this comes with a price, so we can't use this data directly we can't directly query it. This has to be paid in addition, and we have if we want to bring a subset to the analytics tier with jobs as an example, we also have to query it. And this brings us to the next question: is this a trap? How often do I need to query a gigabyte until I'm back at my analytics price? And if you have in mind, so okay, I have to pay 0.6, so under $1 cent per gigabyte for every time I'm querying it, we are coming to 830 times a query. So if you query each gigabyte that you ingest into the data lake 830 times, it is maybe reasonable to move it over back to the analytics tier. In practice, you will be far below this, and we will show you how this goes. And I think, yeah, this is for now. That's it for costs, right? Let's move over to some use cases. And I'd like to start with one of my favorite tables from our colleague Fabian Bader. We use this slide, this table, every time when we start the discussion with customers. Okay, what should we ingest? What is reasonable to ingest? And it's pretty simple. Our answer is start on top. Start with things that have a very high impact on the security part. And the king for it are the security alerts. Yeah, this is correlated data. This is, yeah, we want to have alerts. Every product where we can have alerts, fine. This is something we want to bring in to our environment. And the next thing is sign-in logs and audit logs, because we have a very high value for detections for it. And at the end, we see in almost, in de facto every attack, an identity is involved. So we want to have this data at our fingertips. And we want to use, we have a lot of detections for it. So the next thing is control plane, so like Entra audit logs or Azure activity logs and so on. And the next thing is we want to have management and DevOps data and other correlated data like user entity and behavior analytics. And that was the first part, the first third of it. And this is stuff where our advice is keep it in analytics tier. This is not a data lake use case. But if you want to extend your retention, if you have, I don't know, if this is only usually reasonable for 90 days, for detection purposes, you only need 90 days or maybe 30 days even. So, but if you want to have it for regulatory or for forensic reasons, you want to maybe keep it for a year or even longer. And this is the use case for data lake. The next part, very expensive sources like your proxy logs with a high ingestion volume and, yeah, let's say limited detection use cases, but important detection use cases. In the past, yeah, especially for firewalls, our advice was, yeah, buy more features from your firewall vendor to get alerts instead of raw logs. But as security people, we want to have these logs and we want to keep these logs. And here, the second use case is, okay, let's bring them to data lake and then use the KQL jobs to surface only the subset that we need for detections and keep the rest for later if we want them for forensics, as an example. And the third part is that it's a special one. The Defender logs by themselves. This is nothing you ingest in Sentinel usually today. So you use advanced hunting for querying this. You use custom detections to build detections on it. So XDR custom detection, not Sentinel analytic rules. And maybe you want to extend the retention for these also. And these three use cases we want to discuss now. And Marvin starts with number 1.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So, yeah, first use case, we would like just to extend the retention, which already means we will ingest the data primarily into the analytics tier, just to use our detection use case. Our screenshots is based off the security portal, especially for one table called AID non-interactive user sign-in logs from the category of Entra. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know AID non-interactive user sign logs can be quite big. And for this reason, we have different use cases to extend the data retention. So we have configured here additional or just a total retention of 180 days, which means the data will be for additional 90 days in the data lake available. And yeah, here we have the full capabilities in general, from advanced hunting or KQL queries and so on. But it is important why we should save the data, and there are several reasons, like Chris already said. We are talking about forensic, regulatory, and this stuff. And combining this data for a longer time in data lake means we are able to just to bring them in combination with our sign-in logs or different type of logs. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah,
I think
this is reasonable for every source where you have many and good detections for. And as you can see, this table is then usable at all different points. You can use them not only in the advanced hunting or the Sentinel KQL queries. You can also use them for both types of detections, and you can use the new data lake features like the jobs or the Jupyter Notebooks. We will show them in a few minutes. And let's come to the next use case, and this is stuff that we had the example of this log, so maybe network raw logs also. Is that you want to ingest these logs directly into the data lakes and skip the analytics tier and skip the ingest cost for the analytics tier. But yeah, this is reasonable for tables where you have not many detections or even no detections. And if you have some detections for it, this is maybe a use case for the KQL jobs. We will come to them in a sec. But yeah, Marvin, this comes with some limitations, right?
Yeah, we have some limitations. As you can see, regards the lower ingestion costs, we are limited in some kind of functions like advanced hunting, custom detection, and of course analytic rules. But as Chris said, we can use KQL jobs. And one point I really like is the Jupyter Notebooks here, because we are able to do visualizations first time on the data which is in the data lake tier. So this is interesting, of course, to do some TI mapping or something like that in the past. And of course, we will talk, or we have a short demo later about it. But before going deeper in this type, I think we have the third use case about Defender XDR tables, right?
Yes, and this is a special one because the XDR tables have a different nature. So in the part, or for now, our advice is to don't ingest them into Sentinel, into the analytics tier, because they have a massive volume. Every network event, every file event from all of your clients, every process event, this is an expensive thing. And we already have Defender for Endpoint usually run it, in this case running on the clients, doing a good job, and we can extend it with custom detections. And but yeah, this use case is mainly for we want to extend the retention for these logs. And so far we only had the 90 days. And if we want to extend the 90 days, we had to pay the full price for the analytics ingest. And this was, from my perspective, not really a reasonable price tag. So we can skip the whole Sentinel part and come to that unique constellation where we have the data in advanced hunting and can use custom detections, but can't use the Sentinel features, but the data lake features. So
just a small correction, Chris. You said 90 days for the MDE tables, but that's not right, really.
Yeah, Marvin has done a deep dive on retention and costs, and let's go in it.
Perfect. So in default, when we talk about the Defender tables in advanced hunting, we have the data available for only 30 days. So in comparison to the Sentinel default, like for configured 90 days, there is a gap of data where we can have a look on it. And yeah, as Chris said, I had some challenges and I needed to have a look on it. So the common question is, if I want to put this data into Data Lake, how much data will I ingest into Data Lake and what are the costs behind it? So the normal way to have a look on the table size is you have in advanced hunting or in Sentinel, there is a function like estimate data size. This normally works for a single table, and you can get a good overview how big is the table size, what are the costs behind it. But if we're talking about the MDE tables, we have more than one. And in my tests, I always reach the limits of advanced hunting. So there is a limit of querying in a 15-minute time frame. And if you hit the limit, you're not able to do any other query in the 15 minutes. So what I did here is I had a look on how big is the sample size for the different tables in the last hour, then calculated all the entries for the last 30 days, which are in my example from a company size with about 6,500 devices in Defender onboarded. There are about 1.6 billion events in all the Defender tables. And that's quite a big data. And you can see the summary is here. We have about 2.3 terabytes of data. And what is also interesting in the screenshot is you can see an average size per kilobyte. And this is about 1.45 kilobytes. And I've compared it in different environments, and it seems like the average size is nearly something about 1.3 up to 1.7, just to give you an overview how it could be different in your environment. And of course, the query is available in GitHub, so feel free to have a look how big is your data in Data Lake, and then you are able to do a cost estimation. On the upper part, we have the data ingestion. So maybe you know it from the slides before. Just, yeah, in combination with my data ingestion, you can see there is quite ingestion of nearly just amount of $400. But if you compare it with this old solution with Sentinel, putting them in analytics tier, means normally we have $5 here, right? And we say, let's keep the data for 6 months. We have the ratio 6:1 included here, and you will pay like for data retention in general, like $50 in that way. So that means you will nearly rounded about $500 a month for the longer retention for your Defender tables. And of course, compared to our old use cases, this is quite less, or it's less than the Sentinel ingestion and retention fee. Yeah, I think we reached the cost benefit, Chris. And now let's get to the next category.
Yeah, we showed you that in some cases it's reasonable to skip the analytics tier and ingest directly into the data lake, like for, let's say, firewall raw logs also. And if you are maybe a fan of, I don't know, TI IOCs also, you want to surface a subset of the data and bring them also to the analytics tier to allow you to have some detections on it. And in the past, that was also possible. We had a successor called auxiliary tiers and summary logs, and but with Data Lake, we now have a very nice solution. Let's have a look at it. The first thing is now our logs are completely in the Data Lake, so they are not accessible. And we can do two different things, two different approaches to bring them to our analytics. And the first approach is, it's from my perspective a quite funny approach.
Yeah.
So since KQL jobs can use with very low limitations the whole feature set of a KQL query, we could just take our detection and put it into a KQL job and let it run at a high frequency, like 5 minutes, or I don't know, maybe your detections are not running every 5 minutes at the moment, so maybe they are running for an hour, so this is the average time of most of the detections. And use the KQL job to do the queries against the data lake tables, and then have a new table, a custom table in analytics here that's called data lake alerts. And there we can create our alerts in the custom table and build in near real-time analytic rules there to create an alert, a wrapper analytic rule to create a real alert, a security alert for every entry of the data lake alert table. So, and this is a really nice approach. At first when we discussed it, so Marvin and I said, is this really intended? So is this legal? Can we really do it? Yes, we can do it. And for specific use cases where you only need this data, or this amount of data, or the specific part of your logging, or so for 1 or 2 use cases, it's a very reasonable approach. But maybe you have more than 1 or 2 detections, then there is a second approach. And this is the approach we also used in the past with that old auxiliary tier stuff and summary rules. We can now use the KQL jobs to bring only a subset of the data to a copy, to a custom table in analytics tier. And there we can say, okay, I only need these 3 attributes, not the whole attribute. So we can have the full log in the data lake, but only 2 or 3 attributes of it in the analytics tier. And we can also do via summarization a deduplication. If I'm looking for IOCs, I don't need every connection for a detection. For me, it's fine if I know that there was a detection from this client. It doesn't matter in the first instance if it was 3 or 4 network connections. And with this approach, so I think this is very cost effective because we have a query and then 1 line. So there is almost no analytics tier costs. And for this, we're assuming 3% of the data lake. But yeah, this is your use case dependent. I think 3% is a reasonable approach for this. And one problem or one limitation, this does not scale unlimited. So we had first ideas, okay, can we do this for everything? There are some limitations at the moment. And this means, okay, we can only have 3 concurrent KQL jobs per tenant at the moment, and we can only have 100 of them in total. So the idea to move all detections to KQL jobs, I think this won't work. But I think we can, for most of the environments, this is absolutely reasonable limits. Okay, coming back to costs. Now we're adding some additional costs, right?
Right.
Come back to this picture.
Yeah, so there's currently no change in this picture, but we will add on the right side the ingestion to our analytics tier. And as Chris already said, we are calculating with the amount of 3% of data. But even if you talk about 5% or maybe of 10%, you can see that the costs are currently in this example like for 40 cents in this example. And even then, you have detections on your data. But of course, you need to know which data you are ingesting and which data you need to re-ingest into the analytics tier. So this is an interesting question, of course, but you can see there are possibilities to save some money. So
okay, enough about costs, right?
Enough about cost. Yeah. So coming back to features, let's talk about an MCP server, LLMs, and maybe even more like for Jupyter Notebooks. It's important if you talk about these both tools. We are using Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is a dedicated extension to work with Jupyter Notebooks, but especially for the MCP server, it's totally easy to use it. We will show it in some seconds in a short demo. And of course, there's a third tool which is named Sentinel Graph, which is natively available in the security portal. And of course, we will also have a look on this data as well. So Chris, I think you have prepared a short demo
Yes.
to have a look on the MCP server.
Yes. This is my Visual Studio Code, and it's, yeah. On the left side, you see the Sentinel plugin from Visual Studio Code, the first-party Microsoft extension. So, and after installation, only a few clicks, you have to sign in there. And yeah, I'm doing it with a passkey. And no, I don't want to sign in there. And then we can see, okay, it connects to my data lake. And we can see all the tables, the different assets and the different log tables that we also saw in the UI in the last hour. And there are also custom tables. And I'm interested in that global secure access table, but I can only see the schema here. So I have questions. And for this, I'm connecting the Microsoft Sentinel MCP server here. It's also, so it's built into, I'm using GitHub Copilot for it. And yeah, just you can see only a few clicks to, and it's good documented by Microsoft. And now I have to sign in. And in this case, the MCP server is like an application, and the data lake is like an API. And you can see I can have a lot of controls, and I can do a lot of stuff with my MCP server. And I was very happy after having everything working. And now, yeah, let's ask some questions. And I say, yeah, I want to do some stuff with this table in the Sentinel Data Lake. And he said, yeah, okay, let me have a look around and let me try to figure out what kind of table this is and get the schema for it. And then I will do a test query and said, okay, this is what is in the table. And now I'm asking, okay, just give me the first 10 entries. And depending on which LLM you're using, you can ask very tough questions. And I think it makes a difference if you use Claude or GPT-4 or so, how good the KQL skills of the agent are. And this brings us to a complete new level of interacting with the storage, with the data in our Sentinel environment, in our data lake. And yeah, that was my demo so far, but yeah, we just continue with the next one. So Marvin, what is a Jupyter Notebook?
So the biggest difference is instead of using KQL in advanced hunting, KQL queries, or KQL jobs, we have now to use Python. So why Python? Why do I have now to learn Python? So in general, most of the time, data scientists are able to work with a natural language because they're doing Python all the time. So that's the language they normally use. So they have a benefit here as well. additional Jupyter Notebooks, as already shown, they will connect to a dedicated runtime pool, which means we are talked about limits and so on, and we have different limits, quite higher limits for our Jupyter Notebooks. That means we do not have timeouts like my query before, or we have issues with the limits here. So that means we are able to do detection algorithms, TI hunting that will go in the past for months or over years. So we have a big benefit to work with the data here. We are able to query the data. We do not run into timeouts. And especially in Python, we are quite happy to do visualizations. So with Archive before, there was no way for visualizations, but with Jupyter Notebooks, it's quite good. And just compared, hey, yeah, we can do visualizations with MCP server as well. But I think if you ever worked with some AI tools to get some visualizations, it's sometimes hard to get what you really want. And with Jupyter Notebooks in Python, you can really tell them what to do, and then you also have very nice visualizations that are based on your data. So Chris, let's have a look.
Okay, yeah. Next demo. In the last demo, we already installed the Sentinel plugin, and now we are using it. And you can see there are different tables in it. And since I'm a big fan of global secure access, as some of you might know, I'm always interested in these tables. But yeah, again, I can only see the schema here, and I want some visualization. I don't want to chat with Claude about this. So I took a sample from this, and then, yeah, so completely alone, and my skills regarding Python and so are very limited. So I've asked Claude to, yeah, just build me another new notebook, a new one for the network access traffic. And we had a short conversation what I'd like to achieve, and he built me, he helped me to build the stuff. And as you can see, we got a lot of data, so 236,000 rows from that table. And he had some first ideas how to visualize it, and I was interested in, okay, which users are doing stuff. So you can see all my Muppets here are working in my lab, and which profiles are they using, and when are they connecting. So mostly at some specific days where I'm doing testing. And this could lead to a longer conversation about what I'd like to visualize. But yeah, trust me, I have no clue about building Jupyter Notebooks. And this is a nice approach. And if you have some data scientists, they will love it. But especially when we're talking about AI, I'm cautious and suspicious. So, okay, again, Chris just told me I should let any AI work on all my data. So, is this really a good idea? What kind of controls do I have? So, I think it's a good idea to leverage AI to solve these kind of problems. We have to do it. And we have to do it in a controlled and trusted way. So, and yeah, let's have a look what just happened. The first thing is, on my client, there's a Visual Studio Code running. And this Visual Studio Code is using an MCP server, and this MCP server is connecting to Sentinel Data Lake. So as an identity admin, for me, this looks like, okay, this is a client, and this is an application, and this is an API, a data storage. And first good news is we have the table, the Cloud App Events table, that you can use in advanced hunting and in Sentinel. And we have a very granular logging for every question, for every query that was made. So we can see the complete query. And the next part is, yeah, this application has to pre-authenticate against Entra ID. And we can limit this to your admin workstation or your managed devices. We can enforce passkeys for the connections. We can block risky users and everything that you know that Entra and conditional access can do. And then the second leg, to connect to that AI. This is not a direct connect. This is a connect via GitHub. So and GitHub, especially, so you should use GitHub Enterprise for this. Has also pre-authentication against Entra ID, and you can limit who is able to do it and what are the conditions. So we can enforce device compliance, we can enforce admin workstations, we can enforce passkeys again. And in GitHub, and this is a thing that we are at the moment also trying to work on a best practice, is there are different policies in GitHub Enterprise that allow you to granularly control who is able to use which of these models. So maybe you're a fan of Gemini or Claude and don't want to use Grok or ChatGPT or vice versa. By the way, all of them, here's a link in it, all of them have told us, and also Microsoft, so yeah, we won't use this data for anything. So you can trust us. And but maybe you want to control this, and there are policies, and you have a good way of controlling what is done with you. And now we have some minutes left, and we like to talk about the last feature, right, Marvin?
Yes. So let's coming back to the last feature, which is named Sentinel Graph. And what I have prepared here is just a normal incident view from the unified SecOps portal. And first going into the details, on the left side, we have our normal incident view. So normally you do not have this stuff right now on the right direction. Just to get the data, you will click on the entity, like here is an entity, like a computer, and there's an option like View Blast Radius. And the View Blast Radius option is based on the exposure nodes and exposure graphs. And what is interesting here for this kind of device, exposure graph and nodes showed us that there is an Azure CLI secret on that machine, which allows us to use a user or authenticate as a user. And of course, this type of user has access to different type of Azure resources, like storage accounts, key vaults, or subscriptions. So this is like the way to do it after an incident arises, but there are also ways to do or to have a look before an incident arrives. So there are options from Microsoft in Advanced Hunting, which are called predefined scenarios. So if you go to Advanced Hunting, you have a small plus sign, can have a look on Sentinel Graph. And here we are looking on one special use cases to have a look who has access to a key vault. And coming back to this use case, you will see our key vault on the right side, and it's a little bit like engineering who has access on it. Of course, it's my resource, but of course it's a subscription. But there are also many other resources like managed identities, etc., which are able to get access on the key vault. So this is like the proactive way to have a look and validate what is happening in your environment. And currently the data stays in your tables, exposure graphs, and nodes. So that means you currently maybe do not have a look on the tables, so you do not get this kind of reporting in that way. And this is also enabled by Data Lake. So it's really a great feature to have a look on the different kind of Sentinel graphs or blast radiuses. So Chris, I think we are nearly at the end of our demo.
Yes, we are at the end, and it's 1 minute after 12.
Great timing.
Thank you for participating. If you have, if there are open questions, just reach out to us. We will publish a recording of that webinar afterwards, and we will also share the slides with you. You can reach out to your, I don't know, your favorite glueckkanja representative, or directly to us, or as a follow-up to this mail communication or whatever. We hope you liked it, and we wish you a nice weekend.